KeShawn Murphy is gone. Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On Mississippi State, your daily podcast on the Mississippi State Bulldogs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, thanks for making Locked On Mississippi State your first listen every single day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $250 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. All right, Landon, we got to talk about it. We talked about KeShawn Murphy yesterday. It's kind of been a roller coaster this week.
Yeah,
Monday, it was like, oh, he might come back. Like, there's this chance. And Tuesday, it's like, he's probably not coming back. Now it's official. He has committed to the Auburn Tigers. I don't think he's signed yet, so I guess not official. But he is committed to the Auburn Tigers.
Yeah, it sucks. And I mean, we talked about yesterday how we were pretty sure he wasn't coming back at that point, but you didn't want to see him stay in conference, at least where you have to see him come back every year. So that part is rough. I mean, we've talked on how hard it's going to be for them to replace him because they had so many other pieces they needed to replace on that team too. But just to have him go, not too far up the road, still in the conference, and have to see him come back in and, might have been an NIL thing. Who knows?
Yeah. And I'm not going to be one of those people that now that he's gone be like, oh, he's really not that great of a player. Like, it's not that big of a loss. No, this is a big loss. I mean, he was going to be your second best player on your team, most likely. Obviously, if you added someone else in the transfer portal that was better, that would change things. But he was your second best last year. He kind of exploded on the scene last year. He completed 56%. I was about to say 56% of his passes. No, he made 56% of his field goals, 7.4 rebounds, and 11.7 points per game off the bench too, and only playing 24, about 24 minutes per game. So this is a guy that didn't play a whole lot of minutes, but put up a lot of production.
Yeah, he was very impactful in the time he was on. So that made you, lead you to believe that if he had more minutes this year, a little bit more of a feature role, he would continue to grow and become a bigger cog within the offense and the defense, especially if he was, getting to play like kind of that power forward position that he wants to play more than just, kind of a little bit of an undersized center. So, I mean, it'll be interesting to see how he fits with Auburn, just because of what they've built over there. So, I mean, that part's interesting, but you hate to see him go.
Yeah, and I actually joined Zach over on Locked On Auburn yesterday, and we talked about this addition. And, they're a team that also lost a lot of size inside. Obviously, Janai Broome, they had a bunch of seniors that are no longer there, and so he was really excited about the move and kind of curious about where I thought he would play. And it's a weird thing because we've talked about it too. He's 6'10", which isn't necessarily super undersized for a center, but when you want to play at that high level, which Auburn does, and you want to win a national championship, you need those centers to be more or closer to the 7-foot range. He's listed at 6'10". I bet he's 6'8", 6'9", just looking at him out there. The issue is he's probably the perfect size for a power forward position, but he can't shoot. Like, he's not a good shooter yet. And maybe he develops that because he actually has pretty good form on his shot. So we'll see if he develops that. But, he doesn't shoot a lot of threes at all. He shot just under 1 a game and made 14% of them. So he doesn't shoot a lot and he doesn't make a lot. So you'll have to find a stretch 5, or if you just go small ball, stretch 4 with him. Yeah. But I think his best spot for them is probably coming off the bench and being that hustle guy.
Oh, yeah, that would definitely fit for him. And, yeah, he is a little bit undersized, but it's more like not going to say he's not strong, but like compared to some of centers, he's not strong enough to really hang down there and just bang with the bigger bodies for a full game. He doesn't have that strength, that width that you need if you are going to be 6'10". So, I mean, they'll find a place for him. I mean, with players like that find a way onto the court. And his shot blocking, his hustle, just the little ways he can contribute will be, they'll find a place for him.
Well, and if there's a coach, Chris Jans has done a great job developing him. Obviously, he's gone from, like I mentioned last year, was averaging 4 points per game The year before that, averaged 3 points per game, and then this year jumped all the way to 11.7 points per game. But if there's another coach out there that's going to develop him, it's Bruce Pearl. I mean, Bruce Pearl does a great job, and so I think he's probably going to have a really good season. I wouldn't be surprised if he has a more efficient season just because of what he will have around him at Auburn. But for Mississippi State, this is a brutal loss. And, Malik Ewan is another guy we've talked about that possibly could come in and replace him from Florida State. We talked about it kind of being a long shot because Quincy Ballard, committed from Wichita State. Well, it's over. He committed to Arkansas, didn't even make it to his trip with Mississippi State. So now you're back to the drawing board, trying to find that power forward, trying to find a center. Like you still got a lot of needs left. You've done a lot of good work recently, but you still have a lot of needs left.
I would say you've done good work. I don't know if bringing in 2 players is a lot yet, but I mean, there's some good, especially the center. Ballard, I really like what he brings to the team, but he can't be it as far as the big guys go.
Right.
That you got to keep building. Like we mentioned, there's a ton of big men in the portal. I mean, every day if there's a few less, but there's a lot out there. You need to go get 1 or 2 more, especially if you can find one that can shoot some threes. If there's one that can stretch it out a little bit, that's who they need to be looking at, because then that allows you to play 2 of them together.
Yeah, you got to be able to stretch the floor, and that was something Mississippi State was really bad at last year. They didn't have a lot of three-point shooters on the team, let alone that actually got on the court and played. And that's going to be right now, as of now, that's something they look like they're attacking. I mean, they obviously got the McGee kid who shoots it at a high clip. Obviously got to get Hubbard back in the fold. And then there's some guys, and we talked about, I believe it was on yesterday's, maybe it was on Monday's, guys that are visiting this week that can contribute to that. And so you hope to lock down some of those guys. The thing about transfer portal, it's a little different than regular recruiting. Once those guys come on visits, these transfer portal players, they know what they're looking for when they go places. And so it's not like high school where they we want to see all these different places. These guys are just ready to find a place and pick it. And so it's easier to get those guys to commit and sign and stay on campus once they're there. And so you can't let them go off campus. Now, some of the guys, they want their options open, and that's just how some of them operate. But usually if a kid leaves campus, he's probably signing elsewhere. And we just saw with Ewan. He went to Arkansas, and he signed before he left and went anywhere else.
Yeah, it's kind of becoming like those old stories from the NFL and NBA from 8 years ago, where it's we weren't going to let him leave the building. We just kept upping our offer until he agreed to stay. That's almost what the transfer portal has become, because
the DeAndre Jordan Clipper situation, lock him in the house. Yeah, something like that.
Jan, start locking people in the building.
Don't let them leave.
But I mean, that's almost what it's become, because it seems like you never hear of someone who took 4 visits on transfer portal visits and committed to the second place he went to. Right. He went to 4 and he committed to the 4th one, or he went to 3 and committed to the 3rd one. You don't hear of anyone actually taking their time and listening to everyone's pitches and circling back around. I mean, I'm sure it happens, but those aren't the ones that, those aren't really the more sought after, high profile ones. Right.
Sometimes you'll see hey, I'm taking these 4 visits, I'm committing on this day. And those, and it's usually all within 1 week. They pack it all in 1 week. Boom, boom, boom. They hit all of them, and then they commit at the end of the week. So you'll see that sometimes. But if they don't have a commitment date set, that means they're just trying to see a team sweep them away. And as soon as they see it, they're going to sign.
Right. Or you see these are the 3 schools I want to go to, committing tomorrow, or some weird thing like that. Why did you hit all those in a day?
Yeah. Right. And so, again, Murphy, obviously a big loss, even adds to the need of needing a big inside, because, I mean, it was already a need even if he was coming back, but now it's a bigger need. You lost arguably your second best player. So you got a lot of work on your hands, Chris Jans and coaching staff.
Yeah, bigs and wings, still need them, and preferably that they can shoot.
Which every team in the country still needs them. So
and they want them to shoot too. So you're up against everybody.
Yeah. So have fun. Come with good NIL packages, or have something special.
Or lock them in the building.
Lock them in the building. Don't let them leave. But all right, well, coming up next, we got to talk about the spring game. It is happening this weekend. Mississippi State, one of the last few teams still doing spring games. So we got to talk about that. That's coming up. All right, well, the NBA playoffs are almost here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. From three-pointers to steals to assists, FanDuel has so many ways to bet your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. All right, well, thanks for making Locked On Mississippi State your first listen every single day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, like I said, right before break, spring game is finally here. It's coming up this weekend. This is the last week of spring practice for Mississippi State, and unlike a lot of teams, they are still holding it.
Yeah. And I'm excited to see some football, even if it is spring football and it's your guys against your guys. At least we're getting somewhat of a real football game.
Right. And it's on Saturday, April 19th. I haven't seen if it's broadcasted anywhere, so if anyone knows that, comment that in below. I tried to look for it and I can't find it anywhere. Yeah. But I'm sure you'll get highlights or something somewhere, so it's not a big deal. But yeah, I mean, Levy talked about why he was doing it, and he was adamant about it. This is a team that still needs a lot of reps, and so we can't afford not to do it.
Yeah, and it's true. This team needs to get out there. We've talked about all the transfer pieces, all the younger guys that are kind of stepping into bigger roles this year. Shapen's coming back from an injury. You want to get him reps with the whole new receiver crew, essentially. I mean, there's just so many things that you want to see in as close to live game reps as you can get before, September hits.
Well, and it's another year in the system, so you want to see that, and you want to see these wide receivers, and you've got to see the offensive line, and there's a lot of things that you still have to see about your team going forward, and so we'll see what happens. I will say, I think it's funny. So some of the teams that decided not to do spring games and decided to do other things, I kind of watched the stuff that they did other than a spring game, and it looked like a dud. Like fans weren't really interested. Like it's just a complete dud. And then my thing is, you see teams like Georgia who did a spring game. Oregon, Dan Lanning said, as long as he's there, they're doing a spring game. Yep. And these are teams that also are going to have their players tampered with, and they're like, we're still playing. We're still doing this. Who cares? And I think that's what you got to do is you got to reward your fans. If you're going to keep asking fans for NIL, you got to reward them by having something like this. So I don't know I think a lot of it was panic moves by a lot of teams, and I understand it. Mm-hmm. And it just doesn't look like it was well thought of, all their moves.
Yeah, and then you had the whole Tennessee fiasco with Nico's news coming down right before
they did a spring game.
Yeah, right. And some people found out on their way to the spring game.
Yeah.
So it's been an interesting year for spring games with everything that's been talked about happening, why they're not happening, things that have gone on. I'm glad it's still happening at Mississippi State. I love watching, like I said, I'm excited to watch football. What's one thing you're obviously you can only glean so much from a spring game, but, what are you excited to see?
It's fine. I was about to ask you the same thing, but my thing, when I watch a spring game, the things I want to see is, again, it's hard. It's a spring game, so you're not going full-fledged. But defensively, you don't want to see many busts. Mm-hmm. That's a big one, and that's like my most important thing is don't get just bust. Don't just bust. Leave guys wide open all over the field. If a guy makes a competitive play, so be it. But just don't get just straight up beat. Sometimes a guy gets open just because he's faster than you and outruns you. That's not the stuff I'm talking about. And Mississippi State has some guys that can do that. I'm just talking about the wide open just bust. So defensively, don't bust. And then offensively, you're probably not doing anything that really challenges the offensive line. So it's hard to tell running game, passing game, like what's happening. But so really all I want to see is Blake Shapen's connection with his receivers. Is he have that continuity? Obviously, they're not going to probably do a lot of crazy stuff, but is that evident when you're watching them?
Yeah, for me on the offense, and you kind of mentioned it with the offensive line, the defense is not going to run any like crazy twists and stunts or games. Right. I mean, there may be one or two, but they'll probably kind of be tipped off that they're coming. But since you have so many new pieces on that offensive line, I want to see how they work together. Do they kind of move as a unit? Do they pass people off well, even if there isn't a game? And how do these guys who have come from, these other places that weren't playing this level of competition, how do they hold up against some SEC defensive linemen? And since you mentioned the bust in coverage, I mean, it's kind of the same thing with the defensive linemen. It's a whole new defensive line. I just want to see get off what they got. I mean, they're not going to be going full bore to hit the quarterback, but what kind of moves do they have?
And it's kind of funny. Another thing you can tell pretty quickly in a spring game, how big is the drop-off between teams? Those are things, even though you're not going full-fledged, you can still kind of tell those. Like, you can tell someone else is in, and things like that. Because obviously a lot of these players will have new numbers. Because that's the one thing about this new era. Like, players feel like change numbers every year. I saw a deal the other day. Memphis's quarterback changed numbers the last 8 years, dating back to high school. High school through college changed numbers every year. And so ended up being one of those things that ended up being a superstition. He kind of had to in high school because of different things. And then he was gifted a number his freshman year. His second year, he changed the number to the number he wanted to have. And then he was like, I'm playing really well. I got to just keep going. And so he just kept going kind of thing. But it feels like you have to learn all new numbers every year. But that's another thing. You can tell where the drop-off is. And so you want to see, like, your first and second team at least somewhat close. And then if the drop-off happens on the third team, so be it.
Yeah, you can tell. Like, a lot has been made about there being depth in the building now. Is it quality depth? Or is it just depth for depth's sake? Like, are these guys that, while you may not want them to start, if they have to go out there and play 2 series, you're not going to get burned because they're out there. And that's kind of what you will see that. And hopefully it's the good side. I'm also excited that we're going to see a little Kamario Taylor. In some space.
No, that would be a good one. And
I'm staying on brand here. Defense, offensive line, and Kamario Taylor.
Yes. Now we'll talk about it next segment. But another thing you can kind of tell is where's the biggest holes in the team? Where do they need to get filled? Levy's talked about obviously some of it. Offensive line he's talked about, and like I said, next segment, we have actually some specific players that are possible targets that would be good additions. But that's another thing. Just, where are the biggest holes at? Are the receivers dropping balls where it's like, okay, we have fast receivers, but we don't have a lot of quality at receiver, stuff like that too.
Yeah. And they might need some size at receiver. That might be something they find out. We got a lot of speed guys, but not a ton of guys that are really go up and win one. No real jump ball guys. That could be something they find out in more of a game setting. Might be something they found out in practice, and that's someone they're looking at in the portal already. But you'll find out if you need some depth in certain places. Maybe some of these transfers you were counting on, you've had inklings in practice that maybe they're just not quite up to snuff, and then you put them in the game, more of a game setting, and they are getting blown off the ball, and it's like, all right, we got to go back in the portal. We got to find someone else.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we just teased it, but next up, Sports Illustrated listed the 5 guys that Mississippi State should target in the transfer portal. We'll talk about that. That's coming up. All right, well, thanks for making Locked On Mississippi State your first listen every single day. Part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, Landon, we got to talk about it. 5 transfer portal players with who would make an instant impact at Mississippi State or instant fits at Mississippi State. This is by Sports Illustrated. Pete Flutak, I believe is how you say his name.
Yep, that was really
okay, so he's the one that wrote this up. The first one is Devon Mitchell, tight end from Oklahoma. The next one is Dante Pollard. He's a cornerback at Stanford. Or Samford. Yeah, Samford. And then Jack Hawes, he's from UNLV. And then Connor Meadows. Let's see. He started at Tennessee, then went to Tennessee State. And then Devin Wright. Connor Meadows is a guard. Devin Wright is an edge rusher, and he came from Texas State. Tallied up 3 sacks in 2023, but missed most of last season. So there was kind of 5 guys that they think Mississippi State should target. Kind of, what's your thoughts on that?
They're positions that either we've heard Levy mention that they might go after. He said,
that was like what, 3 offensive linemen?
2 offensive linemen and a tight end, which were 2 positions that they talked about adding people. And so those make a lot of sense. I will say the one that kind of jumped off to me was the last guy, Devin Wright. And it's really his size. 6'5", 215. That doesn't make sense to me unless you're like a receiver. Like as an edge rusher, that's a weird size. You hope that's some misreporting on the weight.
Right.
But, he's a Mississippi native, so, would make sense from that aspect too. Maybe he's a guy who doesn't make a huge impact this year. Maybe you redshirt him. You let him be in your weight program for a year and, kind of work against your guys. And next year you have a great edge rusher that with some freakish traits. Because, if you're 6'5", 215 and you played at Boise State and then Texas State, you played some pretty good teams and you're holding up at that size, which is just strange.
The Devon Mitchell one is the one that kind of stood out to me. He was going to be a 5-star in the 2025 class. He reclassified to the 2024 class. Last year, it kind of seemed like, just reading some quotes from Brent Venables, there was just some new kid to the college that might be a little immature things happening, maybe showing up late to class, just the mental stuff, the off the field stuff, not off field trouble. Like he wouldn't get in trouble legally or anything, but just off the field stuff like that. Not
football
going to class. Yeah. Football character stuff that he was kind of struggling with. And then this year, Oklahoma obviously has a big issue, a need at tight end, and it was expected to be, okay, now it'll be his show and he can now take over. And he shows up to spring football weighing 275 pounds. You are 15 pounds away from being an offensive lineman. At that point, maybe even less than that, so it's just, is things starting to click with them? And that's just the thing that you don't know. Is it a work ethic thing? You don't know those things. There's going to be some continuity with Jeff Lebby being there, because obviously Lebby was offensive coordinator at Oklahoma. He would have been in part of that recruiting process before he left. So there's at least some continuity there. He is a big time talent, especially as a receiver. I even read a quote from Venables talking about how he's a really good blocker. Like he'll beat you down with a block.
He better be at 75.
Yeah, but that's the thing. If your best attribute is your receiving, you can't be 275. He needs to lose about 25 pounds.
Or go, if not more. Go 3 inches.
Yeah, or go 3 inches and put your hand in the dirt or something.
Yeah, that weight gain is concerning because, you see it all the time where people put on, 15 pounds or something when they get into college. They start doing that. But it doesn't, combined with the quotes, it doesn't sound like it's good weight. Some of it probably is, but 6'4", 275, there's not many tight ends that are making a difference in the receiving game at that weight. That's old school 1990s blocking tight end size right there. That's not spread offense, running up the seam, jumping over people type of size. So that's concerning.
Well, and I mentioned how Oklahoma has a bad tight end need. They do not have a good room at tight end, and they haven't for a few years. And reports there were saying that he wasn't even getting practice reps. And so, and then we obviously saw last year in the bowl game, he doesn't get in the game at all. Like, he didn't play a snap last year. And then if he was getting a rep here and there in practice, and that was it. And that makes you wonder, was he not picking up the new offense? Obviously, they have a new offense coordinator there. Was he, again, not doing the stuff off the field that he should be doing? Obviously, we talked about the weight gain. That's part of off the field stuff that you got to be doing, being in the weight room, working on your nutrition. And so you kind of worry about that, but he's such a big talent that if you take a stab at it, you can't hate it. Right. And maybe him leaving Oklahoma, maybe it was a mutual thing. Maybe they told him you need to move on. Yeah. Maybe that's the kick in the right direction he needed.
Yeah, when someone who's a huge talent, and it's not like this guy's a senior who's never realized his talent can't get on the field. He's young, he reclassified, so he's even younger than your average, but red shirt freshman or sophomore, whatever he's technically classified.
Red shirt freshman,
as so that's worth a swing in the portal, especially if you hit it. That's one. If you swing and miss, oh well. You didn't. You probably have a big. Yeah. And if you hit it, great. You found a dynamic weapon to put in the middle of your offense.
Right, and you have a big need at tight end too. So you are very similar to Oklahoma in that sense in terms of if he does hit and becomes the player, even a little bit of the player that people
Yeah.
thought he could be, he's your starter next year. I mean, I think maybe at this point with him being that much overweight that he's probably not a starter or even much of a contributor next year
Well, he's a
for any team.
Yeah,
A blocking tight end. But he might not be much of a contributor for
goal
any
line
team.
situations. Just
put him at like that fullback, and he can either lead block or leak out
he
or
can
something
take
like that.
snaps and fall forward. Like it's
Very true. Very true. So we'll see what ends up happening. But yeah, I mean, a lot of those positions, like you mentioned, were positions that have been talked about: tight end, guard, center, guard. Just really shoring up that line, edge rusher. You can never have too many of those.
That same flavor of player, coming from the lower level that's been good, but can they really, do they have what it takes to step up to SEC play? So, I mean, it's kind of why Mitchell's the one that maybe you kind of look at because he's the one who at least had the pedigree at one point.
Yeah, for sure. All right, well, thanks for making the Locked On Mississippi State your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL Draft with Damian Parson and Keith Sanchez. As your favorite collegiate players get ready for the next level, get the latest draft rankings, rumors, and news every day. Find Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. I'm Jaron. Check out my work over on Athlon Sports. A lot of college football lately, some NBA writing coming up, some college basketball as well, especially with the transfer portal. Yeah. And then there's my social media. Give me a follow. Follow Landon. There's his social media as well. Follow us on Locked On Mississippi State. We're on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, all the good stuff, posting shorts on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter, and then we'll obviously long videos over here on YouTube. So like those, subscribe, hit the follow button, hit the bell so you get notified when we make a post, do all that fun stuff. And leave some comments. If you want us to talk about something, we'll definitely do that. Or if you just want to interact, we'll definitely do that as well. So do all that. And then until next time, Hail State.
Hail State.